Meanwhile, I left behind the Jews. Okay, questions so far about the Romans? So, somewhere else, this was actually originally a small tribe, and probably originated in Arabia actually. Then they went to Egypt, Mesopotamia, Palestine eventually, and settled there. There was a period when they had their kingdoms. By the way, always two kingdoms. If you read the detail of the history, it's more about Judea than about what was then called Israel. Today is the sum of the two. Jerusalem is in the south. Anyway, there's a period when the Assyrians and Persians invaded from this side, Greeks and Romans invaded from this side. So the story where we are now, Roman Empire, the Romans owned this thing, and later, of course, the Arabs will come. So they were conquered by the Persians, by the Greeks, by the Romans, eventually by the Arabs and the Turks. But we are here now. So one thing you notice is that these people, both because they like to travel, and because they were conquered, they were exposed to a lot of the great civilization, actually. Very few people were exposed to so many civilizations. So the big thing with the Jews, of course, is the religion that eventually, in its Christian variety, will become very important. And there's so many similarities between the ancient beliefs of the Jews and the Mesopotamian beliefs. And, the flood, there's a lot of the legends that are imported from Mesopotamia. And there's a lot of similarities with things that were going on in Babylonia and in Persia. So, of course, there was intersection. The god of Jews, El or Yahweh, and both have a history. Originally, it was the nomadic god. It was a nomadic god, which is actually new. That's where, to me, that's where things start. The monotheistic idea, because this is a god that travels with the people. Mesopotamia was not like that. A city had a god. The god stays there. You can move, but Egypt, same. You move to another city, it's a different god. You can still worship the old one, but the old one is still there. Okay? The god of the Jews is nomadic, follows the people. He's always there, right? In fact, he's the one who tells them where to go. God talks. He's not a kind god. He's a god of punishment. He gets very angry. He orders killings. Religion, what is a religion? Obedience to God. Mostly, to this day, I would say, the Jewish religion is indifferent to unbelievers. It's really about the Jews. And the Tanakh is really a story of the Jews. Okay.
So I remember from an earlier lecture, you had mentioned that, was it Zoroaster? So it started the concept of kind of monotheism.
Yeah.
Is that did that philosophy influence the formation of like, was there an interaction between
if you ask me, yes. Of course, I don't have any final proof.
Yeah.
But because the Persians delivered the Jews, so the Jews were in contact both with Babylonia, when the Babylonian religion was becoming so abstract. Gods were associated with astral bodies in the sky, and with the Persians at the time when the Persian was becoming Zoroastrian. So it's hard to imagine that they were not influenced. And at the same time, you have the emergence of this idea that there's a universal God. In Judaism, it never really was. Well, we'll see.
So what time frame are we talking about here?
Well, that's a good question. It's not easy to answer.
Okay.
Because when this emerges, the oldest part of the Bible, be that 600, 800 BC, it depends who you believe.
Okay.
I mean, the oldest Bible we have is relatively recent, so we can just speculate. Yeah. But it is about, it matches more or less. Zoroaster also, if you ask, people in Iran can tell you 1000 BC, 1200, but most historians would locate Zoroaster 800, 600.
Okay.
Yeah, those centuries make a difference, and that's why you can never be sure about these things. But certainly something happens throughout if you organize what we call the Bible, the Tanakh. In chronological order, something happens. You know, there's a point, there's a beginning where it's Elohim, okay? Plural, consistent plural. The Bible, the English translation you read translates the plural into singular. God created, consistently plural, the gods created. That's normal in Mesopotamia. In Mesopotamia, all the legends say the gods created the earth. And sometimes they are not the main gods. They just, so actually that part, the oldest part of the Bible, Tanakh, is actually consistent with what people in Mesopotamia always said. There were a bunch of gods and they created. So it's very similar if you read the original Elohim, plural. So you have El, and El was widespread in the Middle East. You know, these people had it in Turkey, these people had it in what is now Palestine. So El was around. He had a wife. There's different legends, but the name was around. And it could be that El simply meant a deity. It wasn't a specific person. Or it could be a specific person and then becomes general. So then you have the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that's El. And then there's transition to the name Yahweh, which is a different name actually. This is proper name. El could be a general name for God, but this is a proper name. And originally, apparently, was a Bedouin war god of the desert. So it's difficult to track down these things, but there is definitely already interaction with the other civilization all the time. These are images of El, a god called El from different places in the Middle East. With Moses, things start beginning get a little more clear. He started assuming that the shape that we have of God that we have today. It's still a bodily God. So that we have today in the Bible. It's a God that is capable of both good and evil. You know, sometimes he orders massacres. Sometimes he makes mistakes. And the important is that his power is limited to the land of the Jews and to whatever the Jews do. He never does something for the Persians, or it's for the Jews. It's almost like a general conducting, leading the army. And the reward is material actually. If you think of it, I will give you the promised land on this planet. On this planet. So actually, technically speaking, it's a material reward. If you obey me, I'll give you a promised land. Okay, then it goes up. See, Babylonian influence. At this time, Yahweh becomes an inscrutable God. It is not clear what Yahweh thinks. He talks less. And I thought I also had Zoroaster on this slide. Maybe it's the next slide. And you have to wait until this point where Yahweh is the only God. Because before that, it was the God of the Jews. The other gods also exist. There's nothing that says, but at this point, which is later in the chronology, becomes the only God. I thought I also have Zoroaster. Maybe it's coming. We'll see. So anyway, you know the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, has the 5 books of the Torah, and then some other books, and then the Christians added the Old Testament. So to give you an idea, the oldest copy of the Tanakh that we actually have is from the year 1009. So everything before 1009 is speculation. Right? Sometimes it's very easy to speculate, but if you go back in the centuries, it really becomes very difficult. The way you can date different parts is references to events that we know are historical. Most of the Old Testament of this part is historical. Of course, Methuselah did not live, 900 years, right? But in terms of the events, the kings and so on, that's pretty, in fact, it's pretty accurate, given that it was not written by a historian and didn't have the Wikipedia. It is a chronicle of the Jews. Yeah, you can see that there are things that come from different legends. God creates the world in 6 days, but then it's said that God creates the world in 1 day. So you can see that the Torah put together sources from different areas. So, and this could be a very long discussion. I mean, there's so many similarities between legends in Mesopotamia and things in the Torah. But the important thing is why things happen. Each event is due to divine design and bears a moral meaning. Okay, in the flood and all these legends in Mesopotamia, just one god decides to do something. Sometimes it's really mean, and then you have the flood. But for the Jews, all these events acquire moral meaning. Okay, you are supposed to be obedient to God, to their God, and if you are not, something happens. Okay, so the spirit of the narrative is completely different. It's still a negative God. Mm-hmm. Don't do this, don't do that. And then there will be a Messiah and so on. Also important, it's a dynamic world. The Greek world, the Roman world, the Mesopotamian world is static. Those gods are there, will be there forever. Period. This is a dynamic world. Something is going to happen eventually that changes everything. Okay? The Messiah shall come, and then the Jews will be liberated, they will get the promised land, and so on and so on. There's a goal at the end of the story. So that's a big difference, because before that, all the other people, not before that, this is coexisting with the other multitude of gods of the world. But the others tend to have a static universe, where there's these gods that they've been there since the creation, they will be there presumably forever, and they keep doing their things, supernatural things, and that's it. But in this case, there's an end to the story. Aha, I knew I had it.
Okay, before we get to that, so geographically, where are most of the Jews at that point in time?
At this point, they are in Palestine, Israel.
Okay, and do they live within like other cultures?
Yeah, not completely, because they are enslaved and taken to Babylonia in between, and then they are liberated by the Persians, so they go back.
Okay.
So they've been nomadic until 1948, basically.
Oh. That's interesting, though, that they can stay together as a people if they've never had a land of their own. Like I think that's so unique.
It's unique of the people who survived, but of those who survived, they are the ones that have that unique thing. There might have been other people who had a nomadic god and recognized themselves as the tribe that moves from A to B to C, but they did not become as influential as this was.
Right.
Yeah.
What made it so different, or why? Yeah.
Can speculate forever.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the fact Christianity, without Christianity, maybe they would not be as important. But can speculate forever. So definitely Zoroastrian influence. Why? As I said, there's an end to the story. Zoroastrian actually had that. There was an end to the story. So what I just told you is false. There was one exception, because I was thinking west of Persia, static world. But actually Persia, there's an end. Eventually the supreme god wins over the bad god. The resurrection of the dead, the Messiah, and there's a Satan that fights, good and evil fight. So that's where I see the Zoroastrian influence. Big difference also with the prophets. In ancient Mesopotamia and many other civilizations, what's a prophet? A prophet can read the future. The biblical prophets, the prophets of the Jews, are messengers. They tell you what God wants. Problem of suffering. Why do we suffer? Why is there evil? Because we disobeyed God. There's a very simple explanation. In Mesopotamia, why do gods do something mean to me? Because they have power to do it, and that day they woke up in a bad mood, and that's what happens to you. Here, there's a an explanation. It goes back to the fact all events have a moral underpinning. Anything happens to you, it's because you disobeyed God or vice versa. So there's this moral behavior so it's a violent God. So that's because today we tend to see Allah as a violent God. So I also have a slide that shows that the God of the Old Testament is not much nicer. He orders more than 100 murders, and some of them just because they don't like his religion. Okay. Now, so that's the Jewish religion. Jesus was a Jew. People sometimes forget that. And he was born in the Roman Empire. Sometimes people forget that. Okay, so this is in the context of the Jewish religion that has been evolving to this point. It's not nice. Whatever. The Jewish religion has been evolving to that point. He is born in that Jewish religion in the Roman Empire. The two things are important. Both of them are important. Okay, so he's a Jew. Of course, he has a different. Maybe that's why I put this slide right there, because his God is different from this God. The Old Testament, the New Testament, when they were merged, that's kind of puzzling, because they don't seem to be talking about the same God. One God is, don't do this, don't do that, and if you do it, I might kill you. And the other God is the opposite. You have to do this, you have to do this, and I love you anyway. So this, and violence is not, I mean, this is not a Christian country. If you have the death penalty, you're not Christian. Jesus never said, go and kill when you think it's okay. Okay? So that's, but anyway. But he was born a Jew, and he was born under emperor, a Roman emperor. And the chronology is kind of interesting because he was born during the empire had just been created. Before that, it was Roman Republic. That's when Octavius appoints himself Augustus, which means emperor, okay? You have the empire. And by the way, Octavius was called the anointed one, which in Greek is Christos. Then it's the time when Rome is fighting with Persia, and Palestine is almost at the border. It was always Roman, but the war was very near. By the way, Augustus was also called Pontifex Maximus, which is still the Latin name of the Pope. And Jesus is born approximately 6 BC, if you believe in the comet. Rome is at the peak. And 5 million. So it's a very wealthy age. Okay? Pontius Pilatus becomes prefect of Judea. He was not a judge. The New Testament is misleading.
Wait, what's that? Prefect?
Governor.
Oh, governor, okay.
Yeah. Very unlikely that he would receive somebody convicted of a crime and discuss with them. It's that story. There's something wrong with that story. Maybe somebody working for him did that, but there's no. Anyway. And so that's the context. And I put it here probably just to remind people this happened in the Roman Empire. In fact, there will be big wars between the Jews and the Romans. There's no Roman document that talks about Jesus. That's the people, the conspiracy theories that Jesus never existed. The number one evidence they present, the Romans were bureaucrats, they documented everything. How is it possible they never speak about Jesus, okay? But these all happened in the Roman Empire, okay? So, Paul, his real name was Saul, very important. Some people think he's the founder of Christianity.
Yeah.
Because he was a Jew, but he was a Roman citizen, and proud of being a Roman citizen. And he had the authority to travel around the Roman world. And guess what? The eastern part, what is today Turkey and Greece, and preach. And he himself says, I never met Jesus in person, but somehow he decided that ideology is good. And he's the one who very clearly states, this is for everybody. It's not just for the Jews, it's for everybody. It's not just for Romans, it's for everybody. It's not just for men, it's for everybody. Okay? And his letters are very important. Repeatedly, the ideology of Christianity we have today is Paul's ideology. The Gospels tell stories, but they are not very clear on what the implications are. Paul's letters are very clear about the ideology. Who were the leaders? Well, they were all killed, so you pick your favorite. Paul, as I said, ideology seems to come from him. The problem, he never met Jesus. He says so, but I say so. He never met Jesus in person. James is the brother of Jesus. Jesus had at least one brother, probably two, from the father's side. And James becomes the leader. These things are so well documented. I'm surprised sometimes people discuss this. You read the book published in the 3rd century, History of the Church. I can't remember the name of the History of the Church, and Irenaeus before him. So these things were well known. James is appointed in charge. All the apostles, when they write to James. I think even Peter writes a letter to James. He's the boss. Where? In Jerusalem. But Peter goes to Rome, and now 2,000 years later, the Catholic Church is based in Rome, so the first pope is Peter. Okay? But most likely Peter would have recognized James as the boss. Jerusalem was the real place. Now, not unusually, people got executed in the Roman Empire, by the way. At that point, the Roman Empire was not a nice empire. And I'm not particularly proud of the Roman Empire. They were very brutal. So they were as brutal as any dictator can be. Any disobedience, there's a light suspicion of insurrection would lead to massive retaliation by the empire. No mercy. So it's not unusual that people would get killed. And the Jews revolted. And guess what? Actually, this was impressive. Not many people got the second chance. Not many people got the third chance. The Jews did it 3 times. And the 3rd time, the Romans destroyed Jerusalem, renamed it Aelia Capitolina, renamed Israel Palestina. That's why it's called Palestine today. Expelled all the Jews. That's how the Jews spread all over the Roman Empire. So the Jews rebelled twice. Infinite amount of speculation whether this is tied to Christianity or not. Was James one of the leaders of the first revolt? That's why he was killed. Were the Christians part of these other revolts? We never know exactly. Oh, this is trivia. I found this looking for this image. The 4,000-year-old fresco. This is St. Paul. How old is Jesus? It's not difficult to...
Hilarious.
Anyway, that's the information you get on the web. This is on the Telegraph, which is a respectable British newspaper. Anyway, so don't forget, 313, Constantine ends the persecution of the Christians. And the Romans continued to kill Christians. I don't know if today anybody would remember Christianity. And then he sends all the bishops of Christianity to this place in Cyprus, and we don't know what he told them. We know what they came back with. 4 Gospels, that's the Christian dogma. Okay? And as you know, there are many other Gospels that were not selected. So, so let's not forget that when they came back from Nicaea, the Emperor of Rome said, that's okay. And if he had said, that's not okay, I think they would have either gone back to Cyprus or gone straight to the Colosseum to be food for the lions. Okay? So whatever we believe today was approved by the Roman Empire back then. And then Christianity gets relocated from Palestine to Rome. And that's when we start counting back from Peter, instead of counting back from Jesus, James, and so on. But if you read that book there, right now I can't remember the name of the person who wrote it. He has all the dynasties in Jerusalem, in Antioch, in Rome.
So before this time, did the Roman Empire have like an official state religion? Or was this new?
Jupiter and all the other guys.
Okay. But to go from, I mean, it's such a drastic
But
change.
it's still here. They did not, at this point, Constantine does not adopt Christianity as the state religion. It just allows Christianity.
Okay.
Just like the Romans allowed so many other religions within their empire. This religion had a problem, and most likely the problem was the King of Kings. The Roman Empire did not like that story. And we don't know how political the early Christians were. But probably that's why the Romans persecuted the Christians and not the worshippers of Baal in Lebanon. They didn't really like dissent. Okay, Paul already told me. So Paul travels this area. That's what is interesting, east. This was the area that really mattered from an intellectual point of view. Greece, and this part was also Greek, all Greek. All these cities were very important from the intellectual, philosophical point of view. Okay, the appeal, probably very appealing for slaves. There were two religions back then that said everybody is the same. Christianity and Mithraism. The Roman Empire eventually chose Christianity, so we're Christian, but Mithraism was sharing the same places with Christianity was also coming from the Middle East and also appealing for women. In fact, as I said, it was probably Constantine's mother who really wanted to end the persecution of Christians, not so much Constantine himself. Why Constantine did, we don't know. Constantine was not a nice guy. He killed a lot of people. He eventually decided, it was probably his mother who told him, I have a favor to ask. Okay, so resurrection for all. I think you know this. Yeah, the big thing is really here because the rest is very